Today's episode of True Crime with Kendall Rae is kindly brought to you by NordVPN, and thanks to their support and support from viewers like you, today I'm able to make a donation to Aspen Flight Academy. Now, the internet can be a wonderful place, but it can also be a very scary, very sketchy, sometimes very dangerous place, and that's why NordVPN exists, to help you be protected while you are using the internet. These days, most VPN providers do offer an online protection feature, but NordVPN takes it up a whole other level because they offer Threat Protection Pro, which is an advanced digital protection from malware and online threats. Let's say you're downloading a file. Threat Protection Pro checks it for malware. Maybe you're clicking a link. Threat Protection Pro blocks websites that are fake, malicious, or used for phishing, fraud, or scams. And there are a few other features that stand out to me and why I like to use NordVPN. And those top reasons for me are that they offer 24/7 customer support, so they're available whenever you need it. They also offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, and one account works on up to 10 devices. And it's easy to quickly connect. See how easy that was? So get started with a NordVPN 4-year plan and get 4 months extra when you go to nordvpn.com/KendallVPN or by using code KendallVPN. And again, that's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to True Crime with Kendall Rae. Thank you so much for joining me today. And if you're new, then welcome. I am so stoked to have you. And be sure to click subscribe so that you never miss an upload from me. So, guys, today we are talking about a case that first broke in 2018. And it happened very close to home for me here in Colorado. And I remember very clearly when this happened. I remember when I first found out that Kelsey Berreth was missing. And I have to be honest, it's hard to say why, but at the time, the more I followed the case, because I was planning on covering it, I just was so disturbed by it. I was so angry after hearing the details, especially following it since then, that I've kind of stayed away from covering it. But so many of you have requested that I talk about Kelsey's story over the years, and I feel like I'm in a better place to do that now. And her story is just so incredibly sad, so angering, truly shocking how evil people can be. And I feel that no matter how many times I cover, these cases and I see endless examples of how evil humanity can be, there's just moments where I cannot believe that people are capable of doing things like this. Sometimes these cases just really make you question humanity, and it can be hard to talk about, but also very important to talk about. And it's also one of those cases that just make you so incredibly angry. Like when you hear the details, the only way to put it is it pisses me off so much. And I have refelt that rage taking another look at this case because there are several people you're going to feel very angry at. But, there's even a person who wasn't involved but could have done something to stop this and didn't. Clearly, I could go on and on about how I feel about the case, but I want to know how all of you are going to feel about it as we start going through these details. And let's start out, of course, as always, by talking about Kelsey Berreth. And what an awesome mother she was, what a cool person she was, how inspiring she was. Because it's so important that we take time to learn about these victims and who they were while they were alive before they were senselessly murdered. So Kelsey Berreth was born on September 15th, 1989 to her parents Cheryl and Daryl, and she grew up on a farm in Moses Lake, Washington, and she also had one brother named Clint. And Kelsey is one of those people that from a young age really knew her purpose. Growing up on her family's farm, she just became so fascinated by crop dusting planes that she decided she wanted to become a pilot. And she actually ended up getting her pilot's license by the time she was a teenager. So impressive. So to say that she was driven would definitely be an understatement, and that drive was something that so many people admired about her. But on top of that, Kelsey was also just a really good person. She was kind, she was caring, and she was also definitely on the shyer side. However, her loved ones say that when she did warm up to people, that shyness would quickly fade away. Now, in her early adult life, she was definitely living a very full life, but she felt like something was missing, and that was someone to share it with. She wanted someone to share in her successes, her dreams, and someone who had the same morals and values as her, and someone who also wanted to live on a big ranch like the one that she lived on growing up. And in 2016, she thought that she had found that person, and she met that person through an online dating site. Now, it's rumored that the website is farmersonly.com. However, I couldn't find any real confirmation about it. I saw a lot saying that that was just a rumor, but I did see some reputable sources reporting that, so I'm not really sure, although it doesn't really matter. They met on a dating website, she and Patrick Frazee, who is a Colorado farmer, and he is described as an outdoorsy, all-American cowboy type of guy. And he's also a farrier, which is a new word for me, but it's someone who trims hooves and fits shoes onto horses. And based on what Kelsey was looking for, he really seemed to, check all the boxes, really seemed to be the type of man that she wanted. And it honestly did not take long at all for the two of them to get serious. After the two of them did long distance for a few months, Kelsey decided to move to Colorado to be closer to Patrick, and by that point, the two of them were already engaged. I do want to clarify, though, that she wasn't actually living with him when she moved to Colorado. Instead of moving in with Patrick at his family's ranch in Florissant, Colorado, where he lived with his mom, Kelsey moved 20 minutes down the road into a townhome in Woodland Park. Now, there is some talk online that really can't be verified that this decision was because she didn't get along with Patrick's mom. But again, we have no idea if that's true. She also did work in Pueblo, so it would just be an easier commute for her, not living out at the ranch. Living in Woodland Park shortened that commute by about 20 minutes, which, may not seem like much, but since Pueblo was still over 60 miles away, I can imagine that those 20 minutes would make a pretty big difference. But let me tell you, that job was worth commuting for. It's super cool what Kelsey was doing. She ended up becoming a pilot instructor at Doss Aviation, which is a very well-known, very esteemed flight school here in Colorado that trains pilots serving in the Air Force. At this job, she got to train pilots for our military, which is super cool if you ask me, and a very interesting job, I would imagine. But anyways, not living with Patrick definitely didn't determine the level of all-in Kelsey was with him. She definitely was all in when it came to their relationship. In fact, in early 2017, she found out that she was pregnant with a baby girl, and she was over the moon with excitement. Then in fall of 2017, Kelsey gave birth to her daughter, and let me tell you, she loved that little girl. Kelsey was so attentive, so nurturing and loving, and if there was one purpose Kelsey had now, it was giving her daughter the best life that she possibly could. And so when she started experiencing anxiety and depression, which is very common postpartum, getting used to being a new mom can be very difficult. The hormones are wild. And she made, in my opinion, a very wise, very selfless decision to help herself and her daughter, of course, by seeking help for that. Now, unfortunately, there isn't too much information on what exactly she did or where exactly she went, but it's been reported that in 2018, she went to California for a 2-week retreat where she was able to sort of relax and reset herself spiritually. And it was not, as Patrick will later try and claim, a rehab for drugs and alcohol. I want to make that very clear that that's not what it was. Kelsey just needed to recharge so that she could step back into her life as a mother and feel a little bit clearer and happier so that she could be the best mom she could possibly be, which is something that I really respect. When she came back, though, life definitely still had its hardships, especially when it came to Patrick. Apparently, their relationship was starting to appear more and more strained. I mean, even to the point where friends of theirs noticed and felt like he was being emotionally abusive towards her. And Kelsey, this is her new family. She wasn't ready to give up on them. Patrick, however, that's a completely different story. And unfortunately, that story is why I'm talking about Kelsey's case today, which leads me to November 22nd, 2018, which was actually Thanksgiving Day. And that morning at 9:03 a.m., Kelsey called her mom, which was actually one of the first of 2 phone calls that she made to her, the second being shortly after at 9:17 a.m., and both of those calls lasted about 6 minutes. Now, Cheryl explains that, with the baby and also a full-time job, that communication between her and her daughter wasn't as often as either of them would have liked, but they always did find time to catch up, which is exactly what they did that morning. They had a very normal conversation. They caught up, just checked in. She says Kelsey talked to her about how proud she was to have made cinnamon rolls for her daughter that morning, but of course, being a 1-year-old, her daughter only wanted Honey Nut Cheerios, which I can't blame her for that. Honey Nut Cheerios are, in fact, elite. Kelsey also mentioned to her mom that she still needed to run to the store later to get some stuff to cook for Thanksgiving dinner. So genuinely nothing out of the ordinary in these calls. And what's so sad is Cheryl had no idea that these calls would be her last conversations with her daughter. And Kelsey, God, she just had no idea that these would be the final hours of her life. And so she did exactly what she said she was going to do and went to the grocery store as planned with her daughter. Surveillance footage from a Safeway in Woodland Park shows Kelsey entering the store with her daughter, picking up just a few items and leaving by 12:27 p.m. And sadly, this would end up being the last public sighting of her to ever exist. Over the next 3 days, Kelsey's phone appeared to make a series of texts and calls, and because of that, no major alarm bells were raised. Her employer, for example, got a text from Kelsey on the 25th of November that said, "Hi, Ray. Sorry for the late notice, but I won't be able to make it into work this week. I need to go see my grandma who is sick." And of course, this seems like a very normal text message, and I'll explain later why it was so strange, but in the moment, he really didn't think anything of it. And also her mother, Cheryl, was another person who got one of these text messages. On the 24th, Cheryl accidentally called Kelsey, and she didn't get any reply from her. She didn't answer, and she never called back. And then shortly after that, she got a text from Kelsey saying, "I'll call you tomorrow." But that call never came. And 1 or 2 days went by without getting that call. And sure, it was strange, but Cheryl just figured her daughter was very busy. I mean, she, like I said, has a full-time job and a baby. She's a new mother. So she just figured she was busy, right? But then an entire week passes and she had not heard from Kelsey at all. And then she started to get concerned. So she decides to reach out to Kelsey's brother, Clint, to see if maybe he had heard from her. And he hadn't. It was the same thing, crickets. So that makes her even more concerned. And the next person she reaches out to is Patrick. And he did have answers to her questions, but they were not at all what she was expecting. Patrick ends up telling her that he and Kelsey had broken up and that Kelsey told him that she needed to get away and get some space. He explained to Cheryl that all of this went down on Thanksgiving, which is when he said Kelsey gave him their daughter to watch and when he returned some of her belongings. And obviously, to her, this felt like a complete 180 from the conversation that she had had with Kelsey on Thanksgiving Day. She never mentioned anything about leaving Patrick, never mentioned anything about needing to get some space. Bottom line, she felt like something was off. None of it seemed like something her daughter would do, so Cheryl asked Patrick if he wouldn't mind going over to her townhouse and just checking on her, make sure that she was there. And he basically said that he would try to, but he had to do something with his cows first, but that maybe he would. And spoiler alert, he didn't. And obviously, all of this is very unsettling to Cheryl. So she decides the best thing that she can do from out of state is to contact the Woodland Park Police Department to ask for a welfare check. And this was just so strange to me, but over 4th of July this summer, my husband, my daughter, and I went to Woodland Park for like a little 4th of July celebration in this neighborhood park. And we parked right in front of Kelsey's townhouse. I was looking at it on Google Maps last night and realized we were parked literally right outside of it. I just thought that was so strange and really eerie to think about. But anyway, that afternoon, an officer went to Kelsey's townhouse. And although she was unable to locate Kelsey, she was able to speak with Patrick. Around 1:50 p.m., the responding officer made a phone call to Patrick to ask if he knew anything about Kelsey's whereabouts. And he told her the same story he told Cheryl, that the two of them had broken up on Thanksgiving and that Kelsey mentioned needing space. And after exchanging their daughter and dropping off some of her belongings, that was the last time he had physically seen her. And he explained that this whole exchange happened in the alley behind Kelsey's house, not in her house, which will be important to note for later on. And as for what he said he was giving back to Kelsey, he explained that he was returning her purse, her car keys, and the keys to her home, as well as her handgun. And I'm sure a lot of you are already thinking this, but him mentioning the handgun was very strategic on Patrick's part, because in this conversation with the officer, he is telling her that Kelsey may have done something to harm herself, or at the very least left without the intention of returning home. He basically tells this officer that just a little while ago, Kelsey was suicidal, and so he took the gun from her for her own protection. And now that he had returned it, she was seemingly gone. So he's basically setting up the idea that now that she had the gun, she probably did something to herself, or possibly that she had run away. He wants to get them going in that direction. But thankfully, it was up to authorities to determine, of course. And there were several other very blatant things that made them think otherwise. For starters, even though Kelsey was nowhere to be found, her cars were still at home. But on the other hand, her keys were missing. And who leaves home without their car but takes their car keys? Obviously, it does happen, but it seemed unusual. Plus, she seemed to have left some very important things back at home, some everyday essentials that would be weird to leave behind if she really was running away. Things like her makeup, her toothbrush, her clothes. I mean, it was all still there. The problem, though, is that there were no major signs that she purposely ran away, but also no major signs that any foul play had occurred. At first glance, it really looked like neither of those scenarios were true. So where is Kelsey? Well, they knew that Kelsey was gone and hadn't been in communication with anyone for what appeared to be a week. And because this was so out of character for her, the police decided to treat this as a missing persons case. And let me tell you, they didn't waste a single second getting to work. By the next day, which was December 3rd, investigators managed to pull Kelsey's phone data, and they learned some very valuable but also confusing information. And according to the phone records, Kelsey's phone last pinged on November 25th around 5 p.m. at a location 800 miles away in Gooding, Idaho, which made no sense, of course, because Kelsey had no friends or family in Gooding, Idaho, and had no reason to be there. So what is going on here? But just to cover all their bases, investigators reached out to the Gooding Police Department to ask for their help in searching for Kelsey. Unfortunately, though, they were unsuccessful. It strangely seemed that Kelsey's phone was there 1 second, and then the next second, it completely disappeared from the face of the earth. So by the next day, December 4th, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and the FBI were already being called in to help. And that day, they managed to accomplish a few things. The first being that agents got eyes on Kelsey's daughter, who before this, nobody had confirmed was safe. And don't worry, thankfully she was safe. But another big thing they accomplished that day was securing Patrick's phone. Agents spoke to Patrick at a restaurant in Colorado Springs where he was eating with his brother. And interestingly enough, he ended up agreeing to just hand his phone over, even though they didn't have a warrant for it. Now, to be clear, they were already applying for a warrant, so they were going to get his phone no matter what. And he was with his brother, and he was basically like, dude, just hand it over. What do you have to hide? And so he did. But I wouldn't really say that was any major cooperation on Patrick's part. It was, the pressure in the situation. But it wouldn't have mattered if he had waited anyway. They would have gotten it. And the last thing that investigators did that day was that they performed an additional search at Kelsey's townhouse. And unlike before, which was just a basic welfare check, this time they had the help of a cadaver dog who ended up alerting on the back bumper of one of Kelsey's cars. Now, I did also see it reported, and can't 100% confirm this, but it has been reported that the dog also entered Kelsey's house, but it's unclear to me if she alerted on anything while she was there, which is interesting to me considering what I'm about to tell you, which just stick with me for a minute because I have to provide some context first for that to make sense. So basically, Kelsey's mom and her brother had flown to Colorado to help assist in the search efforts. And on December 4th, that same day that investigators were there, Cheryl felt like something about Kelsey's house just seemed off. And a lot of the things that she noticed were little things that maybe only a family member would notice. But for example, one of them was that Kelsey's trash can was in a different place than she normally kept it. And then another thing was that there was a bath mat she noticed was just completely missing from the scene. But then on the 6th of December, they noticed something major, something that really changed everything. And it was actually Kelsey's brother, Clint, that noticed it when he was using the bathroom. He noticed that there was blood spatter on the underside of the toilet bowl. So early that morning, of course, he and Cheryl notified the authorities, who right away returned to Kelsey's house. And after some extensive luminol testing, they realized that there was blood all over that bathroom. And I mean all over it. On the toilet, on the bathtub, on the towel rack, on the door handle, on the ceiling, the walls. I mean, everywhere. There was blood everywhere. And this probably won't be surprising to you, but after testing, they determined it was, in fact, Kelsey's blood. But that wasn't the only discovery they made. They also found 2 different DNA profiles at the scene that were not Kelsey's. One was belonging to a male and one was belonging to a female. And if that weren't terrifying enough, when they ran an examination of the rest of the house, they realized that serious efforts had been taken to try and clean up that place. And now that they were really looking, they saw swipe marks across the TV and the couch that indicated to them that someone had recently tried to clean those surfaces. And all of these findings took this from a missing persons investigation to a homicide investigation real fast. And that brings me back to what I was saying earlier about the cadaver dog. I think it's very unusual that they were just now seeing these things. I mean, I get that they didn't do luminol testing on the 4th, and the police visit on the 2nd was just a welfare check, which is traditionally just a brief walkthrough of a house. But if there was a cadaver dog at Kelsey's house just 2 days earlier, they didn't detect any of this. And I'm not trying to put any blame on the dog. I just don't understand, especially because of the blood just being out and visible underneath the toilet. I guess I'm just a little confused about why Kelsey's brother was the one to find the blood when the police had been to the house 2 times before and at least once with a cadaver dog. But anyways, the big picture is now this blood has been found. And so there was no time to be wasted, and investigators were fully prepared to go after who they suspected was involved. And that brings me back once again to Patrick. Like I mentioned earlier, investigators already had his phone in their custody. And once they retrieved information from it, well, that was the start of the end for Mr. Patrick. According to what Patrick told law enforcement, he was in communication with Kelsey up until November 25th, 3 days after Thanksgiving. And based on his phone records, that was technically correct. Phone call and text history show that their phones had communicated with each other multiple times between November 22nd and November 25th, including a final message sent from Kelsey's phone that read, "Do you even love me?" To which Patrick responded, "Why would I bend over backwards and stand behind you through everything if I didn't? So to answer your questions, yes, I do." After this, though, all communication with Kelsey's phone and the outside world just completely stopped. And if you remember, her phone had stopped pinging in Gooding, Idaho, which at the time made absolutely no sense. That is, until investigators extracted data from Patrick's phone. They saw that he was making repeated calls to a number with the Gooding area code in the days leading up to and following Kelsey's disappearance. And who did this number lead them to? A woman named Crystal Lee Kenny. And boy, do I have a lot to say on Crystal. However, I want to explain more about what was going on in the public eye at this time. Kelsey's disappearance, as you can probably imagine, was a major shock to her loved ones and also to the entire community. Nothing like this had happened there before, and people were devastated, scared, honestly confused. I remember just the general fear here in Colorado around this time. I was constantly being sent emails and being tagged in things. People were just so disturbed, so concerned, and yeah, it was a really scary time. A press conference was held on December 10th. However, authorities were pretty strategic with what they were willing to share. Even though by this point they were certain that this was a homicide investigation, they decided to keep that information to themselves and only shared what they thought the public needed to know.
Kelsey's been missing and been reported missing by her mother, Cheryl, since Sunday, December 2nd at about 12:37 p.m. Mountain Standard Times. Officers were able to contact her place of employment at Doss Aviation down in Pueblo, Colorado, and were advised that they had received a text from Kelsey's phone on the 25th of November stating that she would not be into work the following week. Officers from the Woodland Park Police Department did respond to Kelsey's residence on December 2nd and performed a community caretaker search of her residence to see if they could locate her. She was not inside her residence. Cheryl did reach out to Kelsey's fiance, Patrick Frazee, and he called her back, saying that he hadn't heard from her since November 25th when Kelsey texted him. Patrick told officers that he hadn't seen her since Thanksgiving, November 22nd, when he exchanged their daughter is currently with her father, Patrick. We've reviewed video from the local Safeway grocery store, and it showed Kelsey shopping with her daughter on November 22nd at about 12:27 p.m. That's the last time Kelsey was seen. Reports are correct that Kelsey's phone gave a location near Gooding, Idaho on November 25th at about 5:13 in the afternoon. We've executed search warrants on Kelsey's home as well as both of her vehicles. We are treating Kelsey's disappearance as a missing persons case at this time. We have not identified anyone as a suspect and are asking the public for any information that might help us find her.
And Cheryl also had the opportunity to speak, and she took a moment to let people know a little bit more about her daughter.
I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about Kelsey. She's not the kind that runs off. This is completely out of character. Kelsey loves her God, she loves her family and friends, and she loves her job. She's reliable, considerate, and honest. Like I said, she doesn't run off, and someone knows where she's at. Kelsey, we just want you home. Call us if you can, and we won't quit looking.
And let me tell you, Patrick's lack of involvement in this press conference and his overall just seemingly lack of concern at all for his missing fiance was not something that was lost on anyone. And even though they weren't saying this was a homicide investigation or really giving any details, people were talking about Patrick quite a lot right off the bat. And at this point, investigators were preparing to execute a search warrant on his ranch. And it happened pretty quickly. Just a few days after the press conference was held, investigators descended on Patrick's property. And while some evidence of evidentiary value were collected, a body was not. Interestingly, though, they did find this list that Patrick had made of people who could provide medical care for their daughter in the event that he was absent. But whose name was missing from this list? Kelsey's. And investigators felt like the reason that her name wasn't on the list was because Patrick knew that she wasn't alive. However, they still needed more evidence to prove that. Which brings me back to Crystal Lee Kenny. And I just have to be so real at this moment. She is, and I don't use this word often, I reserve it for people who truly deserve it, but Crystal is, well, she is a see you next Tuesday. She is a bitch. She is a vile human, in my opinion. And quite frankly, I hate her. So let me explain who she is and how she fits into all of this. So like I said earlier, back when investigators were first going through Patrick's phone data, they found that he was making calls to someone with the Gooding, Idaho area code. And they learned that Crystal was the person he was calling. So on December 14th, they decided to give her a call. However, during that call, investigators say that she provided them with false and misleading information. And just to summarize it, they basically asked her if she knew Patrick Frazee and what the extent of their relationship was. And they also asked her the last time that she had seen him or spoke with him. And this is what she had to say. According to Crystal, she and Patrick were basically business partners who co-owned a few horses. And at first, she said that she couldn't remember when they last spoke, but after they pressed her a bit more, she admitted to seeing him around Thanksgiving. In the explanation that she gave, Crystal said that she drove to Colorado through the night on November 24th into the morning of November 25th for the purpose of looking at a horse that they were going to split the cost of. But apparently Patrick didn't have the money that he needed, so she just ends up turning around and went straight home, which, mind you, is like a 10 to 12 hour drive. Also, another weird thing is Crystal wasn't even driving her own car. And when she was asked about this, she said that she borrowed a friend's car to make this drive. Now, she did end up explaining that she loaned her truck to a friend who was moving and then used this friend's car to make the drive because the car was more fuel efficient. But in hindsight, it's very obvious that her decision to drive this car was very strategic. But anyway, investigators then ask her if she knows who Kelsey Barrett is. And she said that she had only heard about her through the news, through the reporting on her being a missing person. So she's pretty much just trying to distance herself from the victim as much as possible. And by this point in the conversation, investigators said that they could tell Crystal was just pretty much done answering questions. So after that, over the days that followed, they decided to dig more into Crystal and try to figure out, who she is and her background and see if there was a connection that they're not seeing yet. And they end up finding a lot. They learned that Crystal was recently a divorced mother of 2 who absolutely knew Patrick Frazee better than she said she did. They actually got in contact with her ex-husband, Chad, and boy, did Chad have a lot to say. It turns out that Crystal and Patrick had known each other since 2006 and had actually dated on and off for a few years. And apparently, Patrick was even her first love. And it also turns out that their relationship did not end when Crystal married Chad. Chad said that in 2016, which was right around the time that Patrick and Kelsey were meeting, Crystal began having an affair with him, and to his knowledge, their affair was going on through 2017. And people also found out later on that Patrick had actually gotten Crystal pregnant too, but she didn't go through with the pregnancy. And that's not all that Chad shared. He also told investigators that Crystal had lied to him about where she was on November 24th and 25th. She said that she was with friends in Idaho. Chad said that she only admitted to him that she was in Colorado after the FBI had called her. And not only that, he also said that she started acting super paranoid after they called her, which tells you a lot, right? And then there was something else that he shared, and that was that on December 4th, Crystal asked him if he could take her to get her a new phone because she mysteriously just couldn't find hers, which, if you don't remember, December 4th was the same day that Patrick handed his phone over to law enforcement. And of course, coincidences happen. I've heard of a lot of coincidences in my day, but I am 1000% sure that her losing her phone on the same day that Patrick's was taken is no coincidence. But obviously, this conversation with Chad was super eye-opening to investigators, and of course, they wanted to speak with Crystal again. So they fly out to Twin Falls to conduct a more formal interview. But they didn't get very far with that at all. Just before they could do or say anything, Crystal decided that she wasn't going to proceed without a lawyer. However, they were still able to collect her DNA because of a warrant they had gotten. But yeah, they pretty much just had to leave after that. But right around this time, investigators did end up getting information from 2 of Crystal's closest friends, and that information ended up being very helpful. The first friend was that woman who had lent Crystal her car, and she right away consented to them searching the vehicle, which was very helpful, especially because investigators found something super interesting. I guess this woman kept a handgun in her car, and when they checked that handgun, one of the bullets was missing, and it wasn't missing before Crystal drove that car. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not entirely sure if they ever really figured out what happened to that bullet, but what this tells investigators was that this trip to Colorado was likely not what Crystal said it was. And honestly, that discovery was nothing compared to what they found next when they talked to one of Crystal's really good friends, Michelle. And just buckle up for this next part. According to Michelle, on October 22nd, 2018, Crystal called her and told her that Patrick had asked her to kill his, quote, baby mama. Let me just say that again. Patrick was asking Crystal to murder Kelsey, who is his baby mama. And now here is Crystal telling Michelle But why? Why was Patrick asking her to kill Kelsey? And why was Crystal then telling this to Michelle? Well, the way Michelle explains it, Crystal was hysterically crying and super upset about the whole thing. And I don't know, maybe was just so upset about the idea that she was asked to kill someone that she needed to confide in a friend. And as for what Patrick said, apparently he told Crystal that Kelsey was abusing their daughter and that someone needed to do something about it. Which right off the bat, I want to say that is not true. But anyway, I'll get more into that later. Now, maybe it's just me, but I feel most of you will agree with this sentiment. If a friend is coming to me and telling me that there is someone that wants them to kill someone else, I'm going to the cops. I don't care what the circumstances. That is something you immediately do. But, and it pains me to say this, Michelle didn't do that. She told Crystal that she should go to the police, and she never actually ended up doing anything about it herself. She actually said she just trusted Crystal would do the right thing. And I don't care if you trust this person that they're going to do it. You make sure they did it. You listen to the call, you follow up with them. And if you're not getting proof that it happened, you make that call yourself, period. You could have saved someone's life. It's so incredibly frustrating to think about. It is maddening, in fact, that she did nothing about this because Crystal did the opposite of the right thing. And I know Michelle, she has actually said she regrets not saying something sooner and that she lives with that regret every single day. So I don't want to harp on her too much. It's just like mind-blowing that she potentially could have stopped this. And I've got to say, ultimately, it's not her fault what happened. I mean, she literally didn't commit the murder herself, but it just pains me so deeply knowing that there was an opportunity to save someone's life here and nothing was done. Regardless of how serious she thought the threat was or how much she trusted in Crystal to do the right thing, I just so badly wish that something was said sooner. And I'm sure Kelsey's entire family feels the same way. But I think it's a good example for all of us that even if it's uncomfortable, even if you're not completely sure, if you hear something like that, always bring that information to the right people. It could have saved Kelsey's life. I know you guys will have a lot of opinions on this, so I'd like to hear from you, but we still have a lot left to go over, and this next part deserves also a lot of discussion as well. So on December 20th, just a few days after the failed interview attempt in Twin Falls, FBI agents got a call from Crystal saying that she got a lawyer and was ready to cooperate. And from what I understand, when Crystal started talking, there wasn't one person in that room whose jaw wasn't on the floor. I mean, agents who have heard some of the most insane things in their careers were just flabbergasted by what Crystal had to say. So let's go over it. Right off the bat, Crystal confirmed that there was no need to look for Kelsey alive because she knew for a fact that she was dead. And she knew that because she was the one who cleaned up the crime scene, and she was there when Patrick burned Kelsey's remains. And according to Crystal, the plot to murder Kelsey wasn't something that just happened overnight. Instead, it was something that Patrick had been planning since September. In fact, there were 3 total plans to kill Kelsey before she was actually murdered. And Crystal said that she was the one who was supposed to carry out those previous plans. And the first plan to kill Kelsey involved poisoning her with Valium and Ambien, which they had access to because Crystal was a nurse. For this plan, she was supposed to spike Kelsey's favorite coffee, a Starbucks caramel macchiato, and then somehow convince her to drink the coffee despite the fact that the two of them had never met each other before. And I just have to say, Crystal clearly isn't the brightest of bulbs. I think we can all agree to that. And when you look up dumb bitch in the dictionary, her picture is right there. So that, says a lot. This whole plan is just so dumb. I cannot believe they thought this was a good idea. She was going to bring a coffee as a stranger to her house. And then, would you take a coffee from a stranger that just walked up to your door, someone you had never met before? I mean, maybe some people would. Maybe don't do that if you're someone who would. But yeah, there's no way in hell that I would ever take anything from someone that just walked up to my door unless I knew they were my neighbor, I had met them, something like that. She was a stranger, and she thought this was going to work. And Crystal even got as far as knocking on Kelsey's door with the caramel macchiato in her hands. And she tells investigators that she came up with this weird story that she had just moved into the neighborhood and she had heard that Kelsey had gotten her dogs back into her yard or saved her dogs, something along those lines. And Kelsey was like, no, sorry, wrong person. But she took the coffee anyway, probably just to be polite, and shut the door. And I don't know if she drank the coffee or not, but it doesn't really matter because the coffee was actually not spiked. She said that she decided not to do that, and the real reason that she brought the coffee to her house in the end was just to see Kelsey face to face, because apparently she wanted to look her in the eye and see if to her Kelsey seemed like someone who was capable of doing what Patrick was telling her she was doing, or what he feared she would do. And what he was telling her was that Kelsey was an abusive mother, a drug addict, and a drunk who needed to be killed in order to stop the abuse. And again, none of that is true at all. But anyway, Crystal was basically there to size her up and says that she never actually planned to poison her. But like we know, there were 2 other attempts, and she tells investigators that both of those times she got pretty close to actually doing it. The second attempt involved a metal pipe that Patrick had left outside of his property for her, and he told her to go to Kelsey's house and, quote, get to swinging. And Crystal says that she got as far as driving from Idaho to Colorado, picking up the metal pipe from his ranch, and going to Kelsey's house. She even got out of the car with the intent to, beat her to death. But then, once again, she said that she just couldn't go through with it. Then there was a third attempt as well, which was similar to the second attempt, where Patrick had given her a baseball bat this time instead of a metal pipe, and he told her to use that. And again, she just couldn't bring herself to do it. And after that third failed attempt, Patrick had enough and wanted to take matters into his own hands. And according to Crystal's confession, he did that on the afternoon of Thanksgiving. He was the one to go to Kelsey's house, and he was the one to take her life. And what he ended up doing is, it's hard to even put into words how horrific it is. It is so truly awful, so vile. And just to think about her last moments is very upsetting. But Crystal explained that Patrick had tricked Kelsey into thinking that he was going to blindfold her so that she could guess the scent of different candles. I'm guessing they were fall-themed candles. It's right around Thanksgiving. But then when she was unable to see anything and her guard was down, that's when Patrick struck her again and again with the baseball bat. She was completely unable to defend herself while she was attacked, and all of this happened while their 1-year-old daughter was in the house. I'm serious. She was in the back office while her father was murdering her mother, very close to where she was. I don't understand how, as a parent, you could do this, at all to the mother of your child, which is not only evil in itself, but you got to think of the second element, the secondary victim here, his own daughter. He is taking her mother away from her. And it just adds a whole other layer that she's going to know one day that he did it while she was there. It just truly breaks my heart. I will never understand things like that. And once it was over, Patrick put Kelsey's body in a black plastic tote, which he then put in the back of his car. And this is so shocking, but after he does all of this, after he bludgeons Kelsey to death, dude gets in his car and goes to his family's Thanksgiving dinner, has the audacity to sit with them. Meanwhile, Kelsey's body is in his trunk outside. And after this, rather than store her body somewhere on his own ranch, Patrick drove the tote with Kelsey's remains to a barn that he was leasing in Cripple Creek, where he left her for 2 days. And here's where Crystal says that she comes into the story. She explained that on the afternoon of November 22nd, the same day that Patrick killed Kelsey, she got a call from him saying that she needed to get to Colorado because there was a mess she needed to clean up. And she said that she knew right away exactly what he meant by that and was planning to go. But the thing is, she wasn't able to leave until the next day. So it wasn't until a day and a half later, on the 24th, that she packed up her friend's car with a hospital gown, bleach, rubber gloves, trash bags, and shoe covers and started the long drive out to Colorado. And during her drive to Colorado, she says she received another call from Patrick. And this call was equally disturbing, if not more. Rather than beat around the bush like he did on the previous call with something cryptic, Patrick just straight up tells Crystal that she needed to keep an eye out for a tooth, a literal tooth. And he believed he had left the tooth behind. And Crystal tells investigators that she ended up finding that tooth and also so much more. In fact, when she got to Kelsey's house and saw the crime scene for herself, she said she was frozen in horror. And I think anyone would be. I mean, this was a horrific crime scene. There was blood everywhere. And so she walks investigators through what she saw, what she cleaned, how she cleaned it, and approximately how long it took, which was about 4 hours, according to her, give or take a few. And anything that she couldn't clean, she said she put into trash bags and loaded into the back of her car. And after that, and I genuinely do not know how she was able to stomach this, but Crystal stopped at a Sonic drive-thru, which is confirmed through surveillance footage. It's hard to wrap your mind around how someone could go and clean up a scene like that, search for someone's tooth, remove anything that couldn't be cleaned, and then just hit up the Sonic for some food, for a drink. I don't know what she was getting, but I do not know how a person does that. Then she said that she and Patrick met up at a gas station where she says he filled a 5-gallon jug with gasoline, and then the two of them went to that barn to go pick up Kelsey's remains. And from there, they drove to Patrick's ranch, and that's where they used the gasoline to burn Kelsey, along with all of the bloody evidence. And that's why, to this day, Kelsey's remains have never been recovered. And God, this next detail really just breaks my heart. But Crystal even told investigators that while they were burning her remains, Patrick told her what Kelsey's last words were. And they were, "Please stop. Please stop." Even while Kelsey is being brutally attacked, probably thinking about how this could be the end, that she may never see her daughter or anyone in her family, anyone she loved ever again, she still said please. And that tells you so much about the person that she was. And for Patrick to have just continued as she is begging for her life, the mother of his child, he just kept going. Again, there are just no words to explain that type of evil. There's no way to understand it. And the extent of their evil did not stop after Kelsey died and they burned the evidence. Remember earlier when I said that texts were being made from Kelsey's phone as late as November 25th? It's probably pretty obvious, but Crystal says that her and Patrick were using her phone to make it seem like she was still alive at that point. Crystal said that she was the one who texted Kelsey's mom and employer, and she was the one who drove it back to Idaho where she burned it, along with Kelsey's purse. The lengths that these two went to are just sickening, and I don't understand. I don't know how Crystal was able to live with herself in the days that she knew all of this and wasn't coming forward. And this next detail really pissed me off. Crystal said that she purposely left blood at the crime scene, some of it, so that police would find it. And I just have to say this. I don't care what people think. This whole confession that Crystal gave was very clearly phrased in a way of, I am also a victim in all of this. And I was trying to help by allowing you guys to find this blood. And it's thanks to me, essentially, that you were able to figure this out. It was like she was trying to make it seem like she was innocent because Patrick was the actual killer and not her. And I will give her a tiny tiny bit of understanding that she could have been manipulated by Patrick to do this. She told investigators that she was afraid that he would kill her or hurt her children if she didn't do what he said. And I don't doubt Patrick was a manipulative person. In fact, I know he is. And if she really did feel afraid of him, I believe that that could possibly be true. Emphasis on possibly. However, and this is a huge however, there were endless opportunities for her to go to the police and come clean, or get help when she was feeling this pressure to begin with. Every single time that Patrick came to her with a plan, she could have gone to the police. As she was driving there to clean up the crime scene, she could have gone to the police. Once she got there and saw what happened and was as frozen in shock as she said, she could have gone to the police. And then every single day after it happened, she could have come clean at any point, and she didn't. What did she do instead? She continued to lie and deceive authorities until they came knocking at her door, and she basically had no choice. And once they did, she had this whole bullshit story concocted about how she saved evidence for them to make sure that they caught her killer. It's just offensive that she even tried to pull that off. I mean, without a doubt, she was involved in plotting this woman's murder. An innocent woman, a mother, when she herself is a mother as well. And she's going to sit here and try to make herself seem like a hero. And to make it even worse, the only reason that Crystal told investigators what she did is because she had negotiated a deal. In exchange for her confession and testimony against Patrick, she would only have to plead guilty to tampering with evidence as it related to disposing of Kelsey's phone. That was it. That is all she had to do. The prosecutor in this case even said it felt like they were negotiating a deal with the devil. And he also said that that's something that they just have to do sometimes, which I do understand. And they really felt like it was the only way that they were going to get Patrick. But of course, even after she tells them all of this, they had to confirm if what Crystal was saying was true. So on December 21st, she agreed to take investigators to Kelsey's house, the barn where he stored her remains, and to Patrick's ranch to show them and tell them exactly what happened. And we do have footage of it, so let's take a look.
So, it's 11:15, again on the 21st, December 2018. We're inside of Kelsey's apartment with Crystal. Her attorney's with us. So tell me, when you came in, what did you see?
When I first walked in, I saw all over the floor. I saw blood up the wall. Saw blood on the lip wall. That's when
What did you start seeing first?
I started picking up things that were blood splattered that I would have a hard time getting blood off.
Okay. Can you specifically show us, in the interview you told us that you had left blood spots. Can you show me where you left those? And then I'd like Eric to go ahead and take a photograph of those areas. Okay. All right. So moving into the bathroom here, it's a little corner. Can you tell me what you saw in here and what you cleaned up?
I didn't see anything or specifically told to clean the bathroom.
Okay.
So, but I didn't see anything. There might have been blood. There was a lot of blood. So they're on the floor, all over the floor. And there may have been, bloody footprints in here, but I don't specifically remember. I wiped the sink now. I wiped, the toilet, the top of the toilet. I turned on the shower just in case there was stuff in the bottom. I didn't see anything in the bottom of the shower.
All right.
Um,
So if I understand you correctly, you saw blood on the floor or no? In the bathroom?
I don't
All
remember.
right. Did you say that you cleaned off some of the appliances?
I did. I wiped there was blood on the front of the dishwasher. There was blood on the front of the stove. There was, that cinnamon roll pan had blood on the, tinfoil on top of it.
So let me go back. There was tinfoil on top
On
of
top
it?
of the cinnamon roll pan, and it was sitting right there.
And what'd you do with the tin foil?
I put it in the box for the south.
And just hold it there so we get into that. Hey, anywhere else?
Oh, it was the sprayer from here all the way. I had to clean up underneath here. And it was all down here.
They also went to Patrick's ranch, and if you thought that that first clip was chilling, this is just as bad.
Today is December 21st, 2018, and we're up at Patrick Frazie's property. So, Crystal, can you, again, kind of just describe to us right now, first the container. If you can describe the container that we talked about yesterday.
The container was a black plastic tote that was about this tall and about that wide.
So, can you tell us now, can you walk us to where you parked and what you did after you parked?
Right there.
Right where?
Where the aluminum top was. And this was where the burn occurred. I removed belongings from the trunk and put them into the burn.
Was the fire going at the time?
Yeah.
Were you present when he started the fire?
Yes, I was. So the things that were thrown into the fire by me were the belongings from Kelsey's house, the curtains, the pillows, the stuffed animals, the cleaning supplies, the towels, everything that I said on record prior to everything that I took from her house.
Okay.
I also threw in all the clothing that I was wearing, plus a pair of shoes that I had been wearing. And I believe that that's all that I had with me that I threw into fire.
Just to clarify, the Kelsey's purse and contents, you said that you had taken those out and threw those in?
No, those went to Idaho.
Those went to Idaho with you?
The purse and its contents and the phone went to Idaho.
Okay. And those were burned where?
At my property.
Okay.
And at one point, Crystal even mentions that Patrick's mom came outside while they were burning the evidence. And although it's never been confirmed if she knew what was going on, I will say many people wonder if she did.
You had also mentioned that at one point Patrick's mom came out and stood on the deck. Looking over towards the house, can you tell me where you saw his mom?
I could just see her step out between the two trees.
Okay.
So there's the wire dog kennel.
Right.
If you just go right past that, the edge of the wire dog kennel, came out to about there and then turned and went back in the house.
Now, I do think it's important to remember that investigators had already been to Patrick's ranch because of that search warrant I told you about before. But because he had done such a thorough job cleaning up the burn site, investigators never saw it when they were there. This time, though, like you saw in that clip, Crystal showed them right to where it all took place. So they performed almost like an archaeological excavation of the area to try and uncover evidence. And ultimately, all that was left of Kelsey that they could find was that single tooth, which, by the way, that tooth was so badly damaged that they couldn't even conclusively match it to her. And like I said, they also went to the farm in Cripple Creek where Patrick stored Kelsey's body for 2 days. And with the help of a cadaver dog, they were able to find the location where he had left that black tote. And finally, on that day, December 21st, 2018, Patrick Frazie was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and solicitation of murder.
We're holding this morning's news conference to update you on recent developments in this case. Today we arrested Patrick Frazie on charges of first-degree murder of Kelsey Barrett, and he is currently being held in the Teller County Jail. As a reminder, Patrick Frazie is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Patrick Frazie was taken into custody this morning in Florissant, Colorado, just after 7 o'clock this morning, Mountain Standard Time, by members of the Multi-Jurisdictional Task Force, including the Teller County Sheriff's Office and the FBI. Patrick was taken to the Teller County Jail, where he will be held.
10 days later, he was formally charged with 5 felonies, including 2 counts of murder in the first degree, as well as 3 counts of solicitation to commit murder. And he was being held without bail in the Teller County Jail. And from there, thankfully, the road to justice didn't take long. So that brings me to the trial. And even without a body, state prosecutors wanted to move forward with the trial. And that began on November 1st, 2019. And to make their case, they would ultimately argue that Patrick Frazie was mentally and emotionally abusive, and snapped under the pressure of his and Kelsey's relationship falling apart, as well as some financial difficulties that he was experiencing. And a huge part of the state's case, obviously, was the testimony of Crystal Kenny, who we know was given a plea agreement in exchange for testifying. And everything that she said in her confession was ultimately what she ended up sharing on the stand, and her testimony was incredibly damning. However, of course, her word was only as strong as her character, which we know her character is, well, it's just straight up bad. So to make sure that the jury believed her, the prosecution walked through all of the phone data, which ultimately supported everything that she was saying. So let's go over some of what was presented. Going back to November 22nd, Patrick's phone data placed him at Kelsey's townhouse between the approximate hours of 1:30 and 4:30, which was after when Patrick said he last saw her. If you remember, he said that they exchanged the baby and also some of her personal items, but he never mentioned some 3-hour-long conversation that they had. So that's just one inconsistency. So then, after it's believed that Patrick killed Kelsey, both his and her phone were seen moving together. And if he said that he wasn't with her later in the afternoon, then why are their phones moving side by side? Their phones were actually moving together multiple times between November 22nd and November 24th, which matched up with Crystal's testimony that Patrick was using her phone. So clearly he didn't realize that using her phone to make it look like she was still alive would come back and bite him in the ass and prove that he was guilty in the end. And then when it came to Crystal's phone data, well, it told the same story that she was telling. Data from her phone places her at Kelsey's home on the 24th, at the barn where they picked up Kelsey's remains, and then at Patrick's ranch later that evening. Then on the 25th, both her and Kelsey's phones traveled together towards Idaho, which once again was a match to her testimony. But the phone data wasn't the only thing that ended up being useful. There was surveillance footage as well. And that surveillance footage really helped them to establish an accurate timeline for that day. Because believe it or not, the timeline that Patrick gave them was riddled with inaccuracies. So here's the order of how he says everything went. Approximately 12:30, pick up daughter. Meet and exchange from parking area at her house. Approximately 12:45, E&T bank deposits. Approximately 1:30, leave Walmart. Drive 40 miles to check on feed and water cattle. Approximately 2:45, feed, water, and check on cattle. Approximately 3:45, drive home for Thanksgiving dinner. Approximately 4:30, get home. And sure, while some of what Patrick was saying was true, there was a lot of it that was just straight up false. So let's walk through the correct timeline to give you a better picture of how the day actually went. Between 12:02 and 12:27 p.m., we know that Kelsey was with her daughter at Safeway buying those ingredients for Thanksgiving dinner, and once she leaves, she begins driving home. And right around the same time at 12:30 p.m., surveillance footage from a local furniture store shows Patrick also driving in the direction of Kelsey's house. But then a few minutes later, his car is seen heading in the opposite direction, which prosecutors and investigators believe that it's because he got to her house before she did, realized that she wasn't home yet. And so what did he do? He kills some time by going to an ATM drive-thru. And this is confirmed by surveillance footage, which places him there between 12:42 and 12:50 p.m. Oh, and by the way, that black tote that he put Kelsey's body in later can be seen in the trunk of his car in that surveillance footage. So anyways, that part did line up with what Patrick was saying, as well as what he said about going to Walmart. At 12:52 p.m., security cameras show that he enters Walmart, and at 1:06 p.m., he is seen getting infant formula, and at 1:13 p.m., he is seen exiting the store. Granted, that was about 15 minutes earlier than he said he had left, but it was close enough to match up. But here's where his story becomes completely false. He says that after leaving Walmart, he then went to go check on his cattle and then went to Thanksgiving dinner with his family at his family's house. But security cameras don't lie. The truth is, after leaving Walmart, Patrick can be seen driving back in the direction of Kelsey's house. And just before 1:30 p.m., he and Kelsey can be seen on her neighbor's security camera, which points directly at her door. And they are seen entering her home. And 3 hours later, around 4:30 p.m., a series of photos show Patrick leaving. But Kelsey is never seen leaving the house again. So all of that evidence ended up being clearly very useful during the trial. What also ended up being very useful was Patrick's brother's testimony, who testified against him. And by the way, he is a police officer and he had a lot to say. He explained that on Thanksgiving Day, Patrick had shown up for his family Thanksgiving celebration at 5 p.m., which is a lot later than he claimed he got there. He also testified that he noticed that Patrick parked further away from the house than he needed to. And prosecutors say, and I think we can all just understand this with common sense, that he did that because Kelsey's body was in the trunk and he wanted to lessen the possibility that his family may see that. They also had another guy testify who worked at the Verizon store, and he said that on December 4th, which is the same day that authorities took Patrick's phone, that he came in all frantic, freaking out, asking how he could delete data from his cell phone. So that's damning as well. Kelsey's supervisor even testified, explaining that bizarre text that he got back on November 25th, the one where she said that she wasn't going to be at work for the next week. Apparently, the grammar was all wrong, and Kelsey would never call out of work for a week, let alone do it over text. But by far, one of the most damning testimonies, besides Crystal's, of course, came from an inmate at the same jail that Patrick was at. It turns out that while he was awaiting trial, Patrick wrote a hit list of people that he wanted to have killed, and included on that list was Kelsey's mom, Crystal, and even her ex-husband, Chad. And nothing quite says guilty like a hit list, and that's exactly what the jury thought. So on November 18th, after just 3.5 hours of deliberation, they found Patrick Frazee guilty on all charges, and in the end, he ended up being sentenced to life in prison without parole plus 156 years. So thankfully, that man is going to rot in prison for the rest of his miserable life and have to think about what he did. I hope every single day. I hope he dreams about it. I just hope it destroys him mentally while he's in there, just miserable as humanly possible. Now, as for Crystal, and God, does this make me angry. But in the end, after originally being sentenced to 3 years in prison, a judge overturned that and resentenced her to only 18 months in prison and a single year of parole. This truly pains me to say, but as of today, she is a free woman living, according to the DOC, in Colorado. I share a state with this woman. And Crystal, if you for some reason watch this, which I doubt you will, I just want you to know that I truly wish the worst for you. I hope every day of your miserable life is filled with regret and guilt, and that it eats away at you every waking moment. I hope Kelsey is in your dreams. I truly hope you suffer with the pain and the reality of what you did every day for the rest of time. Clearly, we all know how I feel about her, and I'm sure you feel the same, and I'm not going to waste another breath talking about that miserable woman, but I do, however, want to talk about Kelsey's family. In their victim impact statement, they announced their plan to start an aviation scholarship in Kelsey's name, and it's been said that Patrick is being ordered to donate money to it, which I hope that that's true. Now, unfortunately, I searched high and low trying to figure out how I could donate to this scholarship. I don't know if it's even an option. Maybe they don't have it set up yet, or they took it down. I'm not really sure. If any of you know, please let me know. But in the meantime, though, I did want to make a donation in Kelsey's honor to the Aspen Flight Academy. This nonprofit empowers young adults like Kelsey to learn about the joys and responsibility of flying, and providing students with classroom and flight training opportunities. At the time of her murder, Kelsey was helping train pilots, and I know that she would love to see more young people get their wings. Kelsey's family has truly been through one of the most painful things that you can ever go through in this life, and I mean, it goes without saying they have just been through hell and back several times, and their strength is something I can't even begin to put into words. And I know you guys are probably wondering what ended up happening with her daughter, and I wanted to share that her family was given custody of Kelsey's daughter, and at the very least, I'm grateful that she is with people who love her, but you know, it doesn't change the fact that she is going to have to grow up without her mom. No, one day what happened to her mom and who did it, that it was her own father. The trauma that she had gone through and will continue to go through it's just so twisted. It's so unfair. Oh, I wish the best for her and the entire Barrett family. I'm really happy, though, that she's with them and that they can remind her every day about who Kelsey was and how much she loved her. And that's really special. I also wanted to mention that right after the trial, Cheryl mentioned that she was trying to formally adopt her granddaughter. And I just hope that that process went smoothly for them and that they've been able to make some progress towards healing, whatever that may look like for them. And at the end of the day, I just want them to know that they're in my thoughts. And I would love if you guys could leave some encouraging comments for them. Oftentimes, families do read the comment section, and I have heard back from many of them that the words that you guys are able to offer them really, really help. Kelsey's murder was so unnecessary. It was so brutal. Her having to miss out on her daughter growing up just breaks my heart. Her not able to, fulfill her dreams and live out the rest of her life the way that she should have is, I can't even put into words how tragic it is. And what a loss really for not only her family, but for so many others too. I mean, Kelsey really made an impact on so many people and was helping many people achieve their dreams as well. And it's just horrific. But that is all I have for you on this case today, you guys. I definitely want to hear your thoughts, so let me know in the comments below. And I will be back next week to discuss another case. But until then, stay safe out there.